Hey, welcome back. It's Dan with Flawedoffroad. Thanks for tuning back in to part 2 on recentering your H1 wheels. And in this video, we're going to be installing the PVC inserts. I'm going to show you how I painted the wheels, and I'm going to show you how to mount the tires to the wheels, and then we are going to see how they look on old hell on wheels here. So when we left off in the last video, I just got the wheels built, and now I went ahead and got them painted. They turned out pretty good, to be honest with you. Anyway, let's take a look. Always kind of loved this color orange, so, so I got my roll cage, and that's what I decided to do for the rock rings. Now, the inside of these outer wheel halves are still going to be black, and I went ahead and used hammered black, at least on the centers and on the parts you're going to see, and then the rest of it's just kind of a cheap gloss black. I think I might have a little bit of brain damage from all the paint fumes because it's been below zero for like a week, and I didn't really feel like giving up my heat. But anyway, I couldn't wait to see what it looked like, so I took one out of the wrapper and put it together, and I gotta say, I'm pretty stoked with how these turned out. Okay, so these are the PVC inserts. They replace the run flats that come in these Humvee tires. There's nothing special about them. They're just really beefy PVC pipe that they cut and taper down. Now, when you order these, you tell them which tire you're using, and they'll custom adjust the thickness of it or the width based on how thick the bead of what tire you're running is, and then they chamfer out this little spot for the valve stem to ride and for the air to get through into the tire. Okay, so I finally got all the parts and pieces that I need to put these wheels together, and we are going to start with valve stems. So these are some pretty unique valve stems. They actually come as this piece, and then it has the female threads, and then this piece, and also these tire caps have a valve core remover, which is kind of cool. But in order to fit them under this rock ring, you have to use these 45-degree adapters. There's a slot in here, so you basically jam this O-ring on there. I'm going to use some silicone O-ring lube, and you shove them through that slot from the inside. And then you put one of these nylon locking nuts on there and tighten it to 40 to 60 inch-pounds. So you can see that's kind of how it ends up looking, and now you can see why you needed the adapter. I tried putting them in there originally, and the very tip of this was like touching that, and I could have cut that off, but that would look stupid, so I went with these adapters. So basically what I'm using, it's 3M silicone paste. I'm a big fan of lubricating O-rings. It helps them last longer, but I've found in the past that if you use oil, depending on the type of rubber, it can actually kind of break them down. And I do not know what type of rubber this is. All I can tell you is that these are pretty thick for the size. If you're doing this, your wheels are going to come with them, or you can get them on any of the suppliers. I'm just going to put a nice little dabber on there. Stuff helps it seal, and it helps prolong the life of O-rings. So like I said before, it calls for 40 to 60 inch-pounds. Luckily, I got this torque wrench, and it goes in multiples of 10 on inch-pounds. So yeah, like I was saying, this metal's pretty thin, and they don't want you cranking this down too tight, probably because it'll deform the O-rings too, but if it says 40 to 60, I'm going 60. So you got to be really careful with this, because it's really hard to feel this torque wrench on such a light setting. So that's what it looks like. Now let's do the rest of them. Okay, so one quick thing I want to point out, if you are using the military Humvee tires, after you pull out the run flats, they use a bunch of grease and it's left over in the tire, and you need to get that out of there, especially if you're going to be using balance beads like I am. Let me show you. Okay, so basically what I did is took a putty knife and scooped it out of there, and then I'm left with this residue, which I'm going to wipe up with a rag, but this is kind of what it looks like. And this was one that, it's a brand new tire. This hasn't been ran, but it was mounted. And so that grease is pretty new looking. Some of the other ones, the grease was a lot darker, and it was more spread out. So this one's actually going to be the easiest one to clean up with a bunch, but I just scoop it out with a putty knife and then wipe it all up. And then I actually used a little bit of brake cleaner to get the residue off, just because I don't want the balance beads sticking to anything in there. Okay, so now you can see it looks a lot better in there, and hopefully the balance beads will do their job. So now it's time to get the PVC insert in here, which is really fun. Take note of this, that's where your valve stem has to be. So if you have directional tires, make sure you get it the right way. I don't think these are. Everything I can see shows they're the same both ways, so.
There's soapy water.
Don't do that. Now we gotta turn it sideways, which is just as fun. Okay, so now is the time to add the balancing beads or airsoft BBs or whatever it is you're using, if you're using them, before you put the rim in there. Otherwise you won't be able to get them in. A lot of people suggested about 12 ounces for these tires. I'm gonna go with 13 just because we'll see. Hopefully that'll balance these out. $13. It's a good idea to set this up on a bucket, because if you try to do it on the floor, the tire sticks out way farther and it won't push all the way down. It's really important that you line up this hole for the valve stem, which is 90 degrees from this, so it should end up about right here. So what you want to do is take your wheel, find that extra hole, line it up so we know our valve stem's right there. I'm just gonna, well, I know where it's at. This Sharpie sticks. Now see, I ended up a little bit off center and I really want that centered on there, so now I'm gonna have to pick the damn thing back up and do it again. That looks pretty good. So that's what it looks like, and now we need to put the O-ring in there. The problem lies is right in this groove out here. right? So you put it on here and you start fitting it to the groove, and it starts becoming very obvious that it's way too small. So here's what I did last night. I soaked it in hot water for like 5 minutes, and then I just played Stretch Armstrong with it, and you keep stretching it. You can feel when it gets tense. It took about 5 or 6 rounds of stretching it, honestly, till it would finally lay down there in the crack. I'm lubing them up with this stuff, silicone paste. It's like, I don't know, it's really good stuff. It's good for O-rings, dielectric grease, whatnot. So anyway, you get the O-ring in there, and I would probably soap this up a little bit again just to make it slick. Go grab your wheel half, set it on there, and then pick 3 lug nuts, like 12, 4, and 8, and just run them down till at least the wheel surface is touching the O-ring so that it doesn't pop up out of that gap. So you're gonna need an impact to do that quick, because after just a couple minutes, these O-rings will start shrinking again. So here's the O-ring. We're gonna soak it in hot water, make it pliable, and then we'll stretch her out and get this show on the road. While that's going on, I'm gonna go ahead and put some of this paste stuff, crack where the O-ring goes. Not a lot, just a little. And we'll put more of it on the O-ring. So now we're gonna start stretching this bad boy out and trying to get it to fit. Now this thing, it has a lot of give to it, but it bounces right back. So you have to stretch pretty freaking hard to get it to stay. It's kind of funny because I've watched some other videos on this, and they literally just take them out of the box and plop them on there and they fit. So I don't know why these ones are like such a bitch. All right, let's see how that does. Still pretty small. So just keep repeating this until it sits all the way down in that crack. So you gotta be quick about getting the rest of this on there. Okay, we're there now. So quickly place this on there. Remember where your mark was for your valve stem. And the goal is to not let that O-ring move. I'm gonna place 3 of these at, well, first drop one down in there, but picture 12, 4, and 8 o'clock. Just bounce around on these and slowly pull this down. So once you're fairly certain this is pulled down enough to where it's touching the O-ring and it's going to keep it from coming out of place, you can start adding more and zipping them down. Now, what you don't want to do is like completely over tighten these, and I'll explain why when we start torquing them. But you don't want to go too much on one wheel and bend this lip, and that's why we're adding more. You gotta make sure that you apply the right amount of ugga-duggas to these. So these are supposed to go to 100 foot-pounds. So what I did on the first one was I set it to 40, then 60, then 80, then 100. And when I got to 100, I went around the pattern like 3 or 4 times until I had like an instant click on every single one of these. And once I got to there, I called it good. Aired it up to 30 PSI. Let it sit overnight this morning. It was sitting at 28. But the garage was warm last night from the heater, and then it was cold overnight. So I'm hoping that didn't leak and that the air pressure dropped due to temperature. I'm just leaving it sit at 28, and we're gonna see how it holds. It gets pretty confusing, this pattern for this, so I'm gonna take a paint marker on the tire and number the studs, because the pattern for 12 bolts is kind of crazy, and you have to do it so many times that it's real easy to lose your spot. And that's what it looks like. Ooh. And what I'm going to do is actually back them off a little bit and then run them down to snug one at a time, and then we're going to start this torque process. Okay, so I set it to 40. We're just gonna go around, do 40, 60, 80, 100 a couple times, and then we should be done. Okay, so they've all been torqued to 100 for the first time. So what I'm gonna do now is keep going around until I basically get an instant click. Like that, without turning the bolt. And once I have that, then they'll be equal. Now the importance of this, let's just say you just impact all these down and call it good. Whichever ones are the tightest ones are gonna have a tendency to want to blow or pop or break off of there while you're going on the highway or whatever. If you think about it, when you're going on the road, these heat up, the air pressure expands, and if you've got a bunch of them with uneven tightness, the pressure is gonna go to the tightest one. Therefore, if you've got one at 135 foot-pounds and the rest are at 100, guess which one's going to get all the stress? So that's why I think it's important to just do this the hard way and see how much more I get now that I got the rest of them tight. That's a workout. Holy cow. Air test.
Air test.
10 psi. And that is that, my friends. You have one mounted tire now. And I gotta tell you, that was a bit of a workout too. I'm out of shape. So I aired this up to 30 psi just like I did the first one. I don't hear any leaks. That's a good start. So as much as I would love to give you a preview of it, I had to actually pull the front axle back out and drop it down to do some more modifications. And the rear's sitting too low for me to mount it because I ran into my garage door opener, so that's about the best preview that I can give you right now. Thanks for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel, stick around, there's a lot more to come, and we will see you in the next one.